Okay, I'm rising on a point of privilege to explain the basis and the rationale, the mission that we have as a group in this 1899 movement and shadow Congress of the country.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. My first screen is asking the question, are you part of the solution or part of the problem? And I refer to the iron law of oligarchy, which is a political theory developed by German sociologist Robert Michels in 1911. His theory states that all complex organizations, including nation states, regardless of how democratic they are when started, eventually develop into oligarchies. To promote the social dynamics that will countervail this iron law of oligarchy, a polity needs to have stable and sound protocols that would allow the emergence of political leaders that can counter the tendency towards dominant oligarchic control. We do not have that in the Philippines. What we have is an oligarchic deadly loop that sustains and perpetuates the electoral insanity that we go through every 3 years. In the next slide, which is now a flow chart, in effect, you would see the arrows that are circular. At the northeast corner, it says rent-seeking oligarchs pay off election cheating syndicates. And then it moves to another flow process. This cheating syndicate subject COMELEC to regulatory capture. Then it goes to a process of this COMELEC cheating syndicates manufacturing sets of elective officials according to preferences of the oligarch masters they hire out to. In turn, these manufactured elected officials provide rent-seeking opportunities like corruption to their oligarch backers. And it goes ahead and they flow into a process where the oligarchs extract inordinate profits through control of public utilities and other opportunities provided by the elected officials in their packets. And it goes into another southwest corner saying this process, the oligarchs again prepare their war chest derived from this inordinate profits for the next election cycle. And this vicious circular flow is sustained ad infinitum. This is the situation that we find ourselves now. And we have difficulty getting out of this because those who are now presenting themselves as leaders of the nation, prospective candidates for the presidency, they don't talk about this vicious loop. They present themselves as, we are the better man to do it. Like I heard the presentation of Senator Gordon the other day to his, now, they present themselves. I was talking about prospective candidates for president, which is still there. I think it is not there yet. No? It's a continuous loop which is not interrupted by the election cycle because the election cycle itself was captured by this vicious loop controlled by oligarchs in combination with mercenary COMELEC syndicates. And I was saying the candidates presenting themselves operate within the loop. They do not get out of the loop. They just present themselves as the better person to cooperate with these oligarchs. That they are also promising to do some change, but as we have seen in a system like this, people like that, good people like that, are swallowed by this system, and they have no chance, after all, of promoting whatever changes they are espousing. So we are in this situation right now, and we have a problem. And the rational response is to find a solution. And that is why we have groups like this, and we are gathered in this Congress today to discuss this problem and to find a solution for the morass, the political insanity that we are in. So what is Duterte doing? That's Duterte. Look at him. This was a cartoon I borrowed from the Manila Times. Look at that. He is there, giving him the benefit of the doubt. He is ardently trying to balance things. But I think right now, he has just been overwhelmed by what he has to deal with. He's balancing between the US and China. He's balancing between healthcare and the economy. He's balancing between the oligarchy, Too Big Ilaw, Telco, and the people. He's balancing between Sara and Bongo, who is in continuous intramurals. Balancing between Comelec, Smartmatic cheaters, padded voters in the millions, and the ambitions of his chosen presidential successors. He's also balancing between rationality and insanity in this political system of ours. So being overwhelmed, dead man na lang siya. Just the easy way out. It seems to be like that. Sabi niya, pagod na ako, alis na ako, kayo na lang. So he seems to have already quit the field of actual control. He just, he would burst sometimes into some expletive polemics, but beyond that, parang hindi na niya control ang situation. The Comelec situation that's talking about is also exemplified by this meme. This is apocryphal. We don't know if this conversation took place, but this shows you how top-notcher positions in the Senate with the existing padded million voters are easily manipulated. And you see here Cynthia Villar, the recent top-notcher in the Senate elections, asking James Jimenez, bakit ang boto niya mas marami kaysa botante? And the reply, of course, is kasi ma'am, sobrang malaki ang bayad niyo sa amin. Yan ang kalagayan ngayon. I understand, and I think our chairman, the Speaker Ben Lorque, can attest to that. When he was running for party list, he had to have 35 million to bribe this Comelec syndicates to be able to get registered and win a seat in the party list Congress. So most of this party list are known by a lot of people in the Congress as being manufactured by the Comelec. You get a congressional seat for a fee, and the going rate is about that. According to Speaker Ben Lorque, it's about 35 million the last time he was charged and assessed for the fee. So this kind of situation it explains why our civilian elected tribunes always protect the interest of the oligarchy rather than protect the interest of the people. So you have situations where in this Congress tries to redefine public utilities into public services so that they can invite in total foreign control of these services. This is the proposal of Congressman Salceda, who is saying that, hey, mas mabuti pa para mas efficient ang ating public utilities, let us invite the foreigners to do it. So it looks like a proposal that is jumping from the frying pan to the fire. But who cares? They are not beholden to the people. They're beholden to the oligarchs because the oligarchs provide them the money to win their elections. So it's a vicious cycle that was explained by the loop I just presented earlier. So what are the innards of this thing? Of course, we have to show evidence of what we're talking about. So this next slide, which you're looking at now, is showing us the padded votes in the elections that happened from 1987 onwards to 2019. Based on that, this is just a process of demographic analysis, wherein I just looked at the increase in the population rate of the country as provided by the census and the Philippine Statistical Authority. And I looked at the increase in actual registered voters. And you will see that those red rows have problems, because in those red rows, we have a lot of padded votes. As I'm pointing out, it was about only 1.5 million in 1992, but it rose up to a minimum of 12.8 million in 2019. So these are the ammunition that the COMELEC cheating syndicates use when trying to deliver a ranking in the Senate that was paid for by sponsors of this senators vying for office. That's another problem of our political makeup. We have a Senate that is 24 senators, and this was already 24 senators at the time when the Philippines only had 9.5 million people in 1916. Now it is more than a century later. We are now 110 million people, about more than 10 times the 9 million before, but we still have only 24 senators. If we go by proportionate ratios between population and the Senate seats, it should be around 84 senators right now. At the same time, this problematic situation of this dinosaur Senate had been compounded by the fact that they reverted from senatorial districts to national district representation. Maybe that national set was sort of doable at the time when we have less population. They did that during the Commonwealth period, the period when Quezon made that change. But now that we have 110 million people and we have 60 million voters to present your case to, it becomes an impossible task for the senators to run for office on their own resources or even of their own circuit of friends. They have begun to rely on oligarch sponsors to be able to do this national campaign and get to a position of the Senate. And since the Senate is too narrow, just 24 people, any oligarch that bets on a senator will surely be able to exert influence on policy. Because of the lack of people in the Senate right now, even opposition senators are chairing committees, which is really problematic, because you could not now pinpoint responsibility of who is handling the policies of the nation, which emanates from the Senate, because they are a national policy-making body. Kasi wala na silang tao, konti-konti lang sila, kahit na opposition ka, may chairmanship ka pa rin ng committee. Okay? So that is not good. Supposedly, a majority decision has to be made so that it's very clear that there is a majority in charge, and that if things go awry, then the people throw them out in the next elections. This is no longer so in our Senate. Our Senate is so confused. It's just a personal fiefdom of egotistic personalities who are always bragging that they are a republic unto themselves. And that's a lot of bullshit as far as the Philippine interest is concerned. So that Senate has to be discarded, has to be remade, and has to be changed. And the Bayanihan Constitution Commission, which made some proposals, have expanded the Senate and reverted back to senatorial district elections. And the senators don't like that, because their egos as potential presidential contenders would be bruised, and they would not like to have that anymore. Kasi ang tingin nila, pag magkasenador ka na, that is stepping stone to a national constituency that will propel you to the presidency. That's kabuuan talaga ng ating political system. But going back to this thing, I'm showing you here this process of vote tallying. And 1987 was relatively clean because at that time we just had a process of what you call the People Revolt in EDSA, although it might be a misnomer. But at that time, Ramon Felipe made an effort to clean up the voters list. So we had a relatively clean election in terms of voters during the 1987 elections, senatorial elections. That's what was that was what was held at the time. But in the subsequent years, you see an addition of 1.5 million votes, and then 4.7 million again in 1995. That was because of the effect of the very narrow victory of Fidel Ramos over Miriam Defensor, and a lot of people said that Ramos was not really the winner of that election. It was Defensor. And so Ramos, in his cohorts, padded the voters list in 1995, so that they will get a majority in the Senate election, the midterm Senate elections. And this was when the infamous Dagdag Bawas came in, and the most prominent victim here was the late Senator Nene Pimentel. Now, what happened between 1995 and 1998? Ramos had the ambition of trying to run again as president. So he initiated the PIRMA. In the PIRMA, you are required to have 3% to amend the Constitution in each congressional district, and a total of 12% of the total registered voters of the Philippines. So to be able to reach that figure, Fidel Ramos asks for a new registration. In that new registration, about 5 million voters were taken off the list. You see this gap between 1995 and 1998 in the column actual registered actual registered voters. It dropped from 36 million to 34 million. But that is just a net drop, because at that time there was also an increase already of population between 1995 and 1998. But the gross drop was about that much, 5 million, the one that was padded in 1995. So 1998 was one of our cleanest elections as far as the vote padding is concerned. Since a coup was launched against Arab in 2001, the new president, PGMA, was just so busy trying to consolidate her power, which was dubious at best because of the invention of that constructive resignation doctrine of a rogue Supreme Court, which elevated itself above its constitutional source. The padded voters in the election in the COMELEC was not increased. It remained at the zero. But then Gloria appointed Ben Harabalos, the very notorious Abalos, was involved in that China deal, there's NTE, CTE deal. So what happened was that at the time, everything that Ramos took out in 1995 inadvertently because of his ambition to be re-elected was put back in 2004. So we see now again 4.8 million voters padded here. And that was when a very popular Fernando Poe, who was more popular than Joseph Estrada, lost to GMA. And that was also the infamous phrases getting popular at the time was the "Hello, Garci," and "I'm sorry." Those are the very important phrases that became so popular at this time because of the cheating that happened in 2004. So now we go forward. This from 2004, 2007, you see all of those recorded padded voters there. And this has remained so. And in 2010, it was at 6.5 million. This was when we saw the phenomena of Loren Legarda, the most popular senatorial candidate, being outranked by a novice called, Grace Poe. And at one point, the votes of Grace Poe also went beyond the numbers of voters that could vote in the election. And the Comelec Smartmatic at that time, because it was the first time it was being used, just said it's just a computer glitch and nothing more. So what happened was that it was not Lauren Legarda who became top-notcher, but it was Grace Poe. In 2013, we again have these problems of senators even not being able to really become or sit as part of the Senate immediately, because there were problems with some people supposedly being manufactured. Or then this was when I think Coco Pimentel was cheated by Miguel Subiri. So problems galore was also there. This was also the year when Glenn Chong exposed the way he was cheated as congressman in Biliran. These are recorded in most of the social media missives that we have. In 2016, we have about 5.8 million votes there. And according to the anecdotal recounting of things during this presidential election, Duterte almost had 21 million votes, and this padding arsenal was not able to cope with it. So the only person that they cheated at the time was Bongbong Marcos, whose actual margin of Robredo was only about 2 million. So the padded voters list was put to use, and the rest right now is history, wherein Bongbong was cheated. And the cheating went on into our electoral grievance system, and it took 5 years to hear that case, and then they just destroyed it and put it away on a technicality. Now, what happened in 2016 to 2019? This was when a massive padding of the votes was done by Sharif, the current Comelec commissioner now, chairman. During this period of time, if you look at the population column from 2016 to 2019, our population increased from 103 million to 107 million, or roughly about 4 million only, right? But if you look at the actual registered increase, the row, our actual registered voters increased from 54.4 million to 63.65 million, 66 million. Well, you see, while our population increased by only 4 million, our registered voters increased by 9 million. How was that? Whenever there is an increase in population, you put cohort analysis on that, and you just count the 18 years old and above who can actually register. Those are the expected registrants. And the expected increase in registrants is just about 2.7 million based on a 4.0 or 4.2 million increase in population. So this whole thing shows a padding of about 6.3 million, net padding of 6.3 million, what happened during 2016 to 2019. And so whatever you speculate, that padding is there, and that has happened. So now, this is the way it is. This is the way the Comelec uses this as ammunition, this padded voters, to do it, together with this Smartmatic capability. Any automated election system, if the input is garbage, the output is also garbage. You have an input of padded voters in the process of doing the AAS, the automated election system. So you also get rotten garbage output in terms of cheated results in what is turned out by the system. Another table that sustains what we are talking about is this. This is where I identified in the last column the allegations of Defensor, FDR cheating Mariam Defensor with the padded voter that was increased then overtly. at 705, 1,103. You know, padding is done two ways. You increase the votes directly. Usually you do it by transferring the barangay 15-year-old into an 18-year-old category to increase the padded voters. And you also do not unregister people who are dead, and you do not take out the original registrations of people who are transferring. So with that, padded voters happen. And the 705,000 you see there for 1992, that is the overt padding. That is not the residual padding that happens through through the transfer of voters and through the death of voters, mortality of voters. So you see here again in 1995, as I explained already, Fidel Ramos and his cohorts padded the elections registries, and we have about 2 million that was padded there directly into this process. There was nothing that happened in 1998 in 2001, as I explained, but then directly then in 2004 under Abalos, 4 million was overtly added to the list. In 2010, the beginning of the elections of using automated elections under Chairman Melo, 2.3 million was added into the list. So this accumulated padding showed you just was accumulated into that row earlier, wherein I was showing you why we have a cumulative increase of padded voters here in this last column. Now let's go to this other slide that shows you the padded ghost voters ending in 2014. In 2019, the estimated high padded list is 14.7 million. Okay, and these other columns here are more demographic data, which you can study and I can explain to you further. But they are self-explanatory, and the record of this presentation will be there, so you can look at them on your own. Last February 2021, the COMELEC took out about 6.3 net, around 7 million gross padded voters. They said that, or padded list deactivated about 7 million, saying that these people are the ones that have not voted for 2 consecutive elections. But if you will note, it's also equivalent to that overpadding that they did when the voters increased, registered voters increased by 9 million, while our population increased only by 4 million. So they sort of corrected that en masse last February, but they just corrected it on their own. Nobody can interfere what they do. Nobody can check COMELEC. They're not audited because they are an independent constitutional body. And the unintended effect is that they do whatever they want, like charging Speaker Ben Lorque 35 million just to be able to get a congressional seat. So that is how they do these things. They own the COMELEC, they sell you this thing. It is no different than what happened to the time when Rome was decaying, when the Praetorian Guards were selling the position of emperor to whoever would be able to pay. That is what the COMELEC is doing to us right now. So you see here in this graph, it shows you what I was talking about. The red lines are the increase in population. The blue lines, and the red lines are the increase in registered voters. So you will see in 1987, the increase in population between 1987 to 1992 was 7.7 million, and the increase in registered voters is only that much, 3.5 million. So you see in 92, 95, when Ramos padded the senatorial elections, you see that the increase in population was much less than the increase in registered voters. These are signals that padding is happening. The period from 95 to 98 shows you that the 4.5 million increase in population was also negated by the purge that the new registration did. So there's a net minus of 2.3 million during that period. This was when the Ramos purge happened, where 5 million voters were taken out of the list, and we had a clean election with ERAP winning with a landslide. And so you see the difference between the 95, 98 elections and the 2004 elections, wherein you already have Abalos in control. You see them here, that the popular candidate Fernando Poe was defeated, but the difference is that he's more popular than ERAP, but he lost the elections because of the existence of this padded voters. This is empirical data. We are not making up anything. This can be verified in all of the data that is available from the Population Statistical and PSA Authority, Census and PSA, and also the records of these election registries are published records of the COMELEC. So you see here what I was talking about, this time of Abbas, the one labeled as Abbas. You see there was just an increase of 4.6 million in the population of the country during the interval between 2016 and 2019, but our registered voters increased by 9.3 million. This alone already is a factual indictment of what is happening in our COMELEC. And that is what created a demand for the abolition of COMELEC, abolition of Smartmatic. But after a few noises by Digong that he will try to do something about it, we still have the Smartmatic there, COMELEC there, and we have the padded votes there. In fact, the new information that they have released based on data is that they now have 4.8 million new voters. But in fact, the increase of population between 2019 and 2022 is just about 4 million. So there's again the fact that only 2.7 million of this can be qualified to register. But they already are bragging that they have 4.8 million already registered as new voters. And so that means to say they have added another 2 million to the existing 7 million padded votes there. And we now have a total of about approximately 9 million padded voters in COMELEC registries. That is a fact, and that can be empirically verified with simple demographic arithmetic. So these are the people responsible for doing that. The oligarchs, they are, as I've shown in that oligarchic loop, they hire those COMELEC people to have their candidates, and their candidates give them money. They get the money, prepare for the next election, and the cycle starts all over again. Now, who are these oligarchs? These are the oligarchs. Even before in 2015, they were already identified by the movement of R.D. Avellana, the consumers group, as the ones reaping a lot of millions of pesos in terms of the rates that they had been exacting from the people, including the advance payments for the development of sewage facilities, which they never did. You see these people here, Manila, you have Manila Water, which now is Ayala and owned now by Razon. And then you have these other groups also now coming in, like Prime Water, and that's it. And it is not a wonder that right now, if you count all of these things that should be refunded by these people to us, the consumers of this water, it would actually abolish their equity positions, and it can be easily controlled by government. But that kind of accounting and that kind of point of view is not even being discussed in our mainstream media. Simple arithmetic, simple accounting arithmetic, assets and plus liabilities minus liabilities equals equity. The liabilities of the people are so much already. So it has abolished and sort of obliterated their assets, and the people now, through government, should be taking over these utilities, but they are not. Why? Because these oligarchs control the policymakers in both the executive as well as in the Congress. You know, Congress passes the laws favorable to them, and then the executives under their control, who are just some of them are their own employees that become cabinet members, who are responsible for creating IRR, implementing rules and regulations, make sure that this doesn't happen. So that is why we see that this country of ours is actually something like enemy-controlled territory, and the enemy are the oligarchs. Oligarchs controlling this process of rent-seeking, this process of controlling what we should have as a people, which we should benefit from. This is happening in the public utilities sector, and this is happening in the natural resources sector, where they exploit them without giving us, the stakeholders, any part of the exploitation. That happened in Malampaya, exploitation of the Malampaya resources. And it was tragic that although our constitution says we should have 60% of it, the actual sharing of control and profit was just 90% for them, the foreign-sponsored oligarchs, and only 10% for the government. That is really shameful. With friends like that in government and in the foreign investment sector, who needs enemies? So, proceeding further, let's look again here. This is a statement released by Puno. He said that it will take more than quiet words to change this status quo, protected and secured by political dynasties who will not yield their monopoly of political power and the economic elite that established a new monarchy, the monarchy of the moneyed, and will not, never give up their throne. That's from Renato Puno. A very similar quote comes from Mao Zedong. A revolution is not a dinner party, or writing an essay, or painting a picture, or doing embroidery. It cannot be so refined, so leisurely and gentle, so temperate, kind, courteous, restrained, and magnanimous. A revolution is an insurrection, an act of violence by which one class overthrows another. Digong said that he has dismantled the oligarchy. This is a cartoon I borrowed from the Manila Times. So he cut it. This was a cartoon that was published during the time when the ABS-CBN was closed. So by that, he claims that he has dismantled the oligarchy. But is that really so? We see that he has equivocated in his positions regarding the oligarchy. In July of 2020, he was congratulating himself after that closure of the ABS-CBN, and that he said he is now in control of the economy. But then, less than a year later, he was making this statement. He delivers a rare apology on May 4 for lashing out at business tycoons in the past, particularly to the Ayala Group and businessman Manuel Pangilinan. You will note that at this time, Ayala was bought out by Razon. The water interest of Ayala was bought out by Razon, and Manuel B. Pangilinan was also active helping in the pandemic. So because of that, Duterte ate his words and made apologies to them. So we see here that this equivocation of Duterte is not at all in the interest of the people. So we're back to this situation wherein this oligarchy are untouchables. They control us. Our country is like an oligarch-occupied enemy territory, and we have to take it back. We have to go to a process of fighting to bring the country back into the control of the people. Because right now we are controlled, we are manipulated, we are in a very vicious loop where we have to get out of to free ourselves and reclaim our patrimony and avoid being exploited through iniquitous deals in water and electric monopolies and oligopolies. So, do we have to resort to the gun? We have to ask the military to intervene because elections has been suppressed. We cannot do things through elections. Our elections has been a Mickey Mouse election process. Our local elections have some credibility because some degree of control is maintained by vigilant local people, especially if they are not totally dominated by a political dynasty. But in other areas, because of the proliferation of political dynasts, it's almost the same. It's controlled. They do retail vote buying. They do wholesale digital cheating, and the COMELEC rapid proclamation and bahala na kayo sa protesta, wala namang mangyayari dyan. The electoral reform mechanism or redress mechanism is not operational. So the cheating is made to stick until the next 3-year cycle of political insanity sets in again in the next elections. He asked the military to do it. And the military, of course, in any society is always the first to form, like our traditional tribal groups. The person who is the strongest is the warrior chieftain and leads the tribe. That kind of tradition has been carried forward as more complex national organized polities reemerge. The military is still the core thing. There are 3 main functions of the society, of a state, to be not a failed state. It should be able to defend its territory. It should be able to have logistics, finance, and provide the subsistence and nurturing of life for its people, food and everything else. And it should have a foreign relations that is strong enough so that it can align with friends and fight foes together. Those 3 areas, which are the defense, finance, logistics, and foreign affairs. Those are the 3 basic things. But foremost on that, without the military, you don't have a state. And we have experienced this in 1898, when our military was defeated by American intervention. Our republic folded up, and our constitution, the 1899 constitution, which is our Dihori constitution, a fully sovereign constitution created by a free people, became silent. But it has never been abrogated. So what do we do with this legislation? We know that the basis of civilian supremacy over military authority are clean elections, but we don't have them. So we're asking now, in 2022, if the Philippine political class condones and abets this coming rape of our elections, then the army must correct it. In their role as constitutional protectors of the people, the military should demand a COMELEC digital audit by COA because of the presence of millions of padded voters in COMELEC registers. Our automated election systems, just like any computer application, will have a garbage in, garbage out situation if the cleanup of our election registries is not done, and our electoral sovereignty will be raped again in 2022. It is to protect the people from the impending assault on their untrammeled election voting rights in 2022 that justifies the demand for a voter registry cleanup by the military. And we can use the 1899 Philippine Constitution as a reset button. Once enforced by our 124-year-old Philippine Army, whose antecedent, the Katipunan Army, lived and died under this 1899 Philippine Constitution, then the writ of this Constitution will again be followed throughout the land. It provides us with a legal interregnum to be able to do a process of transition peacefully to a new ordered system where the COMELEC will be curtailed and abolished, where our senators will be put in proper place because we now have a federal parliamentary setup. And this gift from our forefathers should be taken advantage of by our people right now. We have legal luminaries like this guy, Alde Tangpol, who argues that the Philippine Constitution is alive and binding. We have Melchor Magnamo, who says the same thing. And our legal professions have to be educated. They have to recognize the fact that their jurisprudence does not end as a penultimate reference to the 1935 Constitution. The 1935 Constitution is an American puppet constitution imposed on us. It was signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt with Manuel L. Quezon just being a photo bomber during that signatory ceremonies. The Laurel Constitution is a puppet constitution of the Japanese. Now, let's do this. Let's look at this process as a resort, as a recourse for us. And this constitutional volcano that we are looking at, process of the hibernating, the 1898 Constitution, has a peaceful process within it in Section 94, the Les Miserables magnanimity principle, wherein existing situations can be subsumed and absorbed and changed in an evolutionary manner. All that is needed is for the leadership within our armed forces to muster the political will to enforce the writ of the 1899 Constitution. And to help the Army muster that political will is our mission. So let's listen to this video. So you see this process, it will be something that we can cut short if you would like to go into a process of interpolation now. I will stop the sharing and I can now, Mr. Speaker, entertain